As we continue our series reviewing all the 8 parts of speech, we're going to have a look at the opening sentence of F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel, The Great Gatsby. And this sentence starts with a fairly long prepositional phrase. So we start with in, that's our preposition, and we go all the way to years, which is a noun, and it's the object of the preposition. So the object of a preposition is usually a noun or a pronoun, and then there are some modifiers that kind of describe the word years. So we have my, which is a pronoun. It's a personal pronoun, and more specifically, it's a possessive adjective. And you can see why it's an adjective because it modifies years. Right? So what kind of years? My years. Then we have a couple of other adjectives as well. We have younger and we have vulnerable. So those are adjectives. And we also have and, which connects these adjectives. So and is a coordinating conjunction, and a coordinating conjunction tends to tie together two equal elements. We also have more, which is kind of tricky because it can seem like this is also an adjective, but it's modifying vulnerable. So vulnerable to what extent? More vulnerable. And you can see then that more is actually an adverb. So an adverb can modify an adjective, and that's what more is doing here. So just watch out for that one. Okay, then we get to our main clause. So we get to my father, and that's our subject. So my father is the subject, and father is the noun, and we've seen my before. So there's our pronoun as well as adjective. Then we get to our main verb here. So gave, there's our verb, the action word. And then we're going to skip me for a second. We're going to go to advice, which is a noun. And this is also the direct object. So if we say gave what, we can say advice. Okay? And some goes with that. Some is a pronoun. It's an indefinite pronoun. And it's acting like an adjective. What kind of advice? Some advice. The word me, which we skipped, is a pronoun, but it's also the indirect object. And sometimes the indirect object comes before the direct object. So if you can say to with it, right, gave some advice to me, then that advice is being passed on to me. So that's why it's the indirect object. Then we get to that, which is a relative pronoun. And sometimes it can be difficult to tell the difference between a relative pronoun and a subordinating conjunction, because that can be both of those things. And in this case, that is a relative pronoun because it gives us some extra information about advice, right? So some advice, that advice I've been turning over in my mind ever since. So think of a relative pronoun as relating more information. Okay, well, it's hard to see here, but there is a pronoun behind here, and that is I. And that is the subject also of this part of the sentence, of this dependent clause that we have added on to our main clause. Then we have a verb phrase here, have been turning. There's our verb phrase. And we have a few helping verbs in have and been. Turning is a present participle, and a present participle can never be your main verb unless it has those helping verbs with it. So there's our verb phrase. Then we have over, and this is a kind of a strange little word here. So over is what's called a particle. And that's not really a part of speech, but some verbs have a little word behind it that looks like a preposition and kind of goes with the verb. So to turn over, over is that particle. Over can also be a preposition in other contexts, but as you can see here, there is already a preposition here. So the preposition is in, mind is the noun, the object of the preposition, and again we have my, which is another pronoun functioning like an adjective. So as usual, we can put the prepositional phrase in brackets, just like we could do before as well. And then we can remember that this is not part of the core of the sentence, but just add some extra information. And then we have the last little bit here. So we have since, which is an adverb, tells us a bit more about the verb. Have been turning over when? Well, since. And then ever is also an adverb. Okay. And it just modifies since a little bit more. Since to what degree? Ever since. And so you can see that adverbs can do lots of things. They can modify verbs, but they can even modify each other. Okay, so that's the whole sentence already. It goes pretty fast. Try some sentences yourself. Do the exercises on the website. And if you're curious about what this advice is that the narrator's father gives him, then read the novel.